All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're going to decode the invisible core drivers of market dynamics. And we'll do this by looking at the incredible launch of a completely hypothetical, but honestly pretty fascinating product, the Novatech holographic smartwatch. By using a fictional case study, we can totally strip away all that real-world noise and focus purely on the fundamental mechanics that actually make a market tick. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a business leader for a quick second. Just imagine opening your business dashboard on a Monday morning and seeing an absolutely staggering number staring back at you. 8.4 million units of your holographic smartwatch sold in a single week. I mean, wow, that's the kind of success that literally makes headlines and breaks records. But looking at a massive number like that really begs a critical question, right? What underlying forces actually drove those massive sales? Was it just, really great marketing? Or is there something much deeper at play? To truly understand this unprecedented success, we've got to look past the hype, the flashy tech blogs, and the brand loyalty. We need to examine the two fundamental sides of the market that quietly dictate absolutely every transaction on Earth. Section 1. Decoding buyer demand. Let's explore what actually constitutes the buyer's side of the market. Now, we often throw the word demand around pretty casually in everyday conversation, but in economics, it actually has a very specific, rigorous meaning. The crucial point here is that demand isn't just about wishing you had a cool new Novatech holographic smartwatch. Say a teenager desperately wants one. Well, if they don't have the funds, that's really just a wish. It's not market demand. True demand actually requires a specific set of rigorous conditions to be met in reality. So there are three primary conditions. First, the consumer has to actually want the product. Second, they must be able to afford it, meaning they have the actual budget for your specific price point. And third, they must have a definite plan to pull the trigger and buy it. If even one of these three conditions is missing, like say they want it and have the cash, but plan to wait for the next generation model, well, true market demand from that specific buyer simply doesn't exist yet. Now, as the fictional CEO of Novatech, navigating this demand is your main job. And there are forces you can control and forces you absolutely cannot. You can control your brilliant advertising campaigns, the premium quality of the smartwatch itself, and your aggressive distribution strategies to get it onto store shelves. But you are completely at the mercy of uncontrollable macroeconomic factors, like sudden tax hikes or soaring interest rates. You also can't do much if a rival tech company suddenly slashes their prices or just floods the market with cheap substitutes. And this is exactly why understanding these demand determinants is absolutely essential. Knowing what influences your buyer directly dictates your most critical business decisions. It helps you decide exactly how many millions of units to produce, calculates your capacity to invest in new factories, and honestly determines whether it's even safe to stay in that market long term. Section 2. The Law of Demand. Okay, now that we know what makes up demand, let's look at the absolute unbreakable rule that governs it across every single market. It states, other things remaining the same, higher the price of a good, smaller is the quantity demanded, and lower the price of a good, larger is the quantity demanded. To put that into plain English, this inverse relationship is basically the heartbeat of commerce. It dictates exactly how the quantity demanded responds the second you adjust your pricing strategy. Think about a downward-sloping demand curve. It perfectly illustrates that exact law in action. If Novatech decides to drop the price of the watch from, let's say, $500 down to $300, the quantity demanded immediately skyrockets. Consumers are reacting to that lower price point by purchasing way more units. It's a direct, measurable response. Section 3. Moving versus shifting demand. This brings us to a concept that actually trips up a lot of managers and even veteran CEOs. And that is understanding the profound difference between merely moving along a demand curve and shifting that entire curve completely. Changing the price tag of our smartwatch simply causes a movement. It just moves us up or down along the exact same structural line. You're not changing the overall market's appetite, you're just finding a different price-to-quantity ratio on the existing path. But wait, what if you don't touch the price tag at all? What if the Novatech watch stays at $500, yet your sales suddenly explode overnight from 5 million units to those 8.4 million units we talked about? I mean, how is that even possible without a discount? Well, this happens when an outside, uncontrollable factor fundamentally changes the overall market landscape. This is what we call a shift. When one of those uncontrollable determinants changes, for example, let's say there's a sudden massive surge in global consumer income, the entire demand curve lifts and shifts outward to the right. You haven't lowered your price one bit, but because buyers suddenly have more money in their pockets, they are generating massive new demand at the exact same price point. Pretty cool, right? So, what actually causes these massive shifts? Well, it could be a change in consumers' income, like we just mentioned. It could be the price of related goods. Maybe the special wireless earbuds you need for the watch suddenly become incredibly cheap, acting as a complement and boosting your sales. It could also be expectations about future prices, a sudden viral trend that changes consumers' tastes, or simply a growing population. These are the specific external factors that can shift your demand curve literally overnight, completely reshaping your market reality. Section 4. The seller's side, supply. Now, we've spent a lot of time talking about the buyer, but let's be real. Without the seller, there is no market. Supply is basically the mirror image of demand. It's the side of the market where entities produce and bring goods and services to consumers. In our fictional scenario here, supply represents Novatech's actual physical capacity to manufacture, assemble, and deliver those 8.4 million complex holographic watches to retail shelves worldwide. And just like buyers have the rule of three, sellers have to satisfy a strict rule of three as well before true supply hits the market. Number one, you must actually have the physical resources and the advanced technology to produce the item. Number two, you have to be able to generate a profit from producing it. Otherwise, you're running a charity, not a business. And number three, you must have a definite, actionable plan to execute that production. If Novatech has the tech and the profit margin, but their factories aren't actually scheduled to run, then that supply just doesn't exist. Which brings us to the law of supply. This is essentially the exact reverse of demand. It states, all else equal, the higher the price of a good, the greater is the quantity supplied. And honestly, it makes perfect sense. As the market price for a holographic watch rises, your company is naturally incentivized to run those factories on overtime, manufacture more, and sell more units to capture that premium profit. Because of this strong incentive, the supply curve naturally rises upward. Unlike the demand curve that slopes downward, this upward trajectory represents the minimum price a seller is actually willing to accept to produce a specific given quantity. This curve is absolutely crucial because it helps managers calculate their capacity to invest in materials and determine their ultimate profit margins at different scales of production. Ultimately, mastering both of these forces, the downward sloping demand curve of the consumer and the upward sloping supply curve of the manufacturer, is the absolute key to business. Finding that sweet spot, the balance between what buyers are willing to pay and what sellers need to earn, dictates the success of every single product launch, and it determines whether a new firm should even take the massive risk of entering the market in the first place. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've successfully decoded the invisible mechanics of the market through the lens of our fictional watch. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. If you were the one actually running Novatech, looking at those 8.4 million sales, how would you aggressively leverage the factors you can control to master these curves and secure your absolute market dominance against the factors you can't control? Think about how these profound, invisible forces are shaping not just our hypothetical smartwatch, but the real-world success of absolutely every product you buy today. Keep that in mind the next time you make a purchase. Thanks for joining us.